welcome to today's edition of the Chat Show. Today we shall be looking at recent developments in the country. We've had the president defending the speaker over corruption allegations in Bukedea. We have had the cabinet reshuffle, Mpuuga's defense, and the action of the speaker not to expel Mpuuga as requested by the National Unity Platform. But we shall also be looking at developments in Senegal and the peaceful presidential election that they've just concluded this week. And with me in the studio, I have Dr. Ojambo Robert, who is the head of history department at Kyambogo University. You're welcome, Doctor.
Thank you, Sarah.
Next to him is Honorable Joseph Ochieno, who is a UPC ideologue and a media personality. You're welcome.
I'm very happy to be here.
And next to Joseph is Afande Awich Pollar, who is the Director of External Relations in the NRM and an advocate of High Court. You're welcome, Afande.
The mighty NRM.
Just right from Doholo.
Yes, so I will start with Afande Awich. What do you make of the president's reaction in Bukedea defending corruption in parliament?
Well, I'm not so sure your question is well framed. Your question is, the president is defending corruption. Is he defending corruption? Did he? Or you're talking of the president's comment in Bukedea? Because it's one thing to talk of the president defending corruption.
Okay, what did he say about corruption?
Major, you're going to fail the question if you start setting your own question.
What did he say about corruption in parliament?
As you know, Sarah, most of the happenings lately, I was not there. I was in America and Canada for close to a month, and the exhibition got me there. And I found almost to the tail end of it, if it is the tail that is. I'm told they have such a bulk of information that they can keep releasing in bits for the whole year. So I don't know whether it is the tail or just the beginning. Now, this now compound it with the comment His Excellency the President made in Bukedea when he was opening that hospital of the Speaker. I think what the President made was that he is aware about attacks on the Speaker on the allegation of misappropriation of funds. But he did not agree with the accusation, and he said most of the people, the legislators, I think, are young people who have just come from the university, who need guidance, and if you take punitive action throughout, you want to gain a result. So it was actually against punitive action as opposed to corrective actions. My understanding of his statement was that even if Anita was wrong, you can correct her, and you don't need to punitively take action like people envisage. So that is what I read of his statement. Now, if it meant defending corruption, then somebody would be reading it to say, we have prima facie evidence on the Speaker on fraudulent and corruption tendencies or activities. You should take action. And that was his response. So, but the way I know the president, who is my party chairman, I wouldn't be surprised if he condones corruption. I mean, I would be surprised if he does it, because he condemns it. He condemns it.
The first statement is the correct one.
He condemns it in he condemns it in entirety, and he doesn't condone it. However, this makes me now tie it with the comment of Andrew Mwenda, which I think our chairman should have come out clear from it. Because Andrew Mwenda not only seemed to imply, but he explicitly said that the Speaker gets this money and he uses it in the best interest of the President. I am not comfortable with that.
So the Speaker steals from the budget and uses it
for
that
the
is
interest. Andrew Mwenda. That is on record. And I think that is unfortunate, because you can't put a dart at the door of the party chairman, at the door of the presidency. You can't put a a door at our fountain of honor. So I would be with the view that if there was a mischief, and as people think there is a prima facie case of a mischief, it could either be handled the way the president is saying that don't take punitive action, take corrective measures and help, but I do not think it is correct to put it at the door of the chairman or at the door of the president, that all this mischief, that all this wrong is being done and done in his best interest. I think Mwenda's view is wrong, in my opinion. And I wonder why, what gives him the motivation, the consciousness to look at it in that way. Either it is an escapist attitude from the people who are involved, he's having an escapist attitude, or other reasons, I don't know, but it's wrong. So, in effect, therefore, this president's statement in Bukedia would not exactly be taken to mean a condoning of corruption, but he said that the legislators and other actors, including the Agatha or Spear who are behind this, he is saying they are young, and even the accused, they are young, many of them are graduates from universities. So instead of taking a punitive measure, take a corrective measure. So that is what I read of the president's statement.
Thank you very
that
much.
That we can help guide them how to proceed.
Yeah, thank you very much, Awich. But don't you think that the president is just romanticizing with corruption?
I don't think so, because other previous actions would show whether he's doing that, because you can, in an institutional framework of statecraft, you can only read the president's romance with corruption in the institutional framework he does. Does he put laws in place? Yes. Does several acts of parliament, including penal code, does he put institutions in place? IGG, intelligence and all that? Yes, he does. Does he fund them? Yes. Does he have courts to work on it? Yes. Are there prosecutions going on? Yes. Are there people who are convicted? Yes. I have said here and again that on top of having the anti-corruption court as a special organ, we could even have an anti-corruption prison separately. So, to show that whether or not it's romancing, you can judge from previous actions. And actions in statecraft is not by mere words of mouth. Actions in statecraft means the institutional framework that you build, the measures that you put in place, the legal systems and institutions, and even funding them. Because if you put them and you don't fund them, then they don't work. So you can only judge how it's romancing by these actions, and which actions prove that it's actually not romancing.
Thank you, Awich, for that response. I will come straight to Joseph. What do you make of the president's defense of the speaker in Bukedia?
Mr. Museveni is a very patronizing individual. This guy has been excessively spoiled by the excess generosity by the citizens of this country, who've been excessively tolerant of him over a nearly 40-year period. And so Mr. Museveni now thinks statehood is an art, a game, down the playground. And so anything that he does is not as a matter of formality, but a matter of his social and personal interest. In any case, I take specific exception on behalf of the young people of this country, and that is to suggest that anybody who seriously criticizes or critiques or pushes a particular matter on the table must be, gray-haired and over 52. And anybody younger is a young person who either don't know what they're doing, or even if they're thieves, whether they steal mabati or they take some of the bricks from Pineti's hospital, they're young, they need to be forgiven. It's basically merely that. That's what this guy's talking about. It's actually shocking that after what the spies and team are doing on social media onto these exposing of the scandals we have in this regime, including the exposing of the scandals around Parliament, including the issues that put the Speaker directly on the spotlight, something that should have raised questions by people in the media as to whether or not the Speaker is any more competent to hold that office, or whether or not, just before the Mabati thing, that these are people who should have been either sacked, face police inquiries, or should actually be effectively Lozira, just like the Mabati people. Mr. Museveni does apparently a cabinet edit, a cabinet amendment, and in that cabinet amendment, there is really no significant change and overhaul. And at some stage, Comrade Awich had indicated to us that a future cabinet reshuffle possibly would deal with some of these people, and it hasn't. So, to very specifically, because I know today you're very strict on time, very specifically for Mr. Museveni to say people who are criticizing Anita Mong. Anita Mong is a decent lady, you know, and particularly because she's a woman, and I've got a soft spot for women, and I would like to see more women leaders and leading exemplary by example, but good example. You know, that those people, for example, people who are pushing for homosexuality and others, it is unfortunate. But number two, Mr. Museveni cheekily goes to Bukedia to hail Anita over hospital, which hospital Betty Kamia and Museveni's anti-corruption, whatever, cannot, whatever, tell us how these monies have been attained over a period of time. And many of us know who Anita was 10, 15, 20 years ago. This country is literally being taken for a ride. And I'm saying so because Mr. Museveni knows that possibly there's not much many people can do. So he plays it like a game. Bukedia does not have a formal organized district hospital. Since when? And you're a lawyer and backed by, you know, flanked by now, three lawyers actually flanked here, you know, that all of a sudden it becomes the responsibility of a speaker to raise resources and build hospitals across the country. What then role is really the role of parliamentarians? What's the role of government? You know, so that we're basically discussing this and not discussing the House and putting Mr. Museveni and Anita and their whole team on the spot is a manifestation of how badly we've moved on. But as I said quickly, also Bukedia is the place where there was a Mukura massacre. And when I look back and talk about homosexuality, because I've told this program and I will keep repeating it, it was very unfortunate for Mr. Museveni to say people who criticize Anita generally, either homosexuals or people who are supporting homosexuality. And I've said it before that this regime was the one responsible officially for public officials, NRA army, NRA soldiers raping men, you know, and it's on record, and nothing has ever happened. And Mr. Museveni, it is naturally, it's Google now. It's a public information, Comrade, which we've discussed this before. You know, so for Museveni to come again and again and again and still say that, oh, these are people who are supporting homosexuality, who are criticizing us peers, it's a blackmail onto the people of Uganda, and it's very unfortunate.
Okay, if I may put the question the other way, Joseph. The Permanent Secretary to Treasury has recommended a 50% cut of Parliament's budget. Given that the President is the substantive Minister of Defense, do you think he's taking action, finance is taking action against Anita's excesses through the budget process?
It's very interesting, actually, who the authorizing idea, you know, behind the PS. And if the PS is doing this as a matter of his own initiative, that's an initiative that must be substantially publicized, and that's an initiative that must be supported. And I hope my colleague panelists here will join me, and indeed all of yourselves, including our friends in the media, not only to publicize this, but to make sure that we support this process. I've told one or two other networks in the last few days that given much more capacity as Ochieno of UPC, I would seek to push for a revolutionary state of mind for the majority of the citizens of this country, to say that, look, we need to practically resist this regime through the budgetary process. That is actually criminally wrong to see the excesses, the splashes that are taking place in the National Assembly and government, you know, and while at the same time we are getting near zero services at the grassroots. So while cutting the budget is one aspect of that, prudence in terms of managing public resources is the other. And so for the PS, if it's done that, that is at least one of two things that should critically be done. But the public must get involved. So I totally believe that if it is true that it's a genuine project, rather the genuine process, it's a process that must be supported.
Thank you. Charity, you're welcome to this show.
Thank you,
And if I could have your take on the name calling in Bukedea, can the president fight corruption?
There is no political will, Sarah, to fight corruption from what the president said in Bukedea. That is now clear. That he has associated himself with the fact that when citizens call out, they are called traitors, they are called imperialists, because the people who were raising these issues are Ugandans. They are not traitors, they are not imperialists. The Constitution awards duties to citizens in Article 17. One of the duty is pay taxes, 17G, but 17I is specific: fight corruption, wastage of government resources, and anything that is seen to work against the management of resources for the public. So the people who were on social media and calling for accountability from Parliament were the citizens of this country. They were never traitors. They were never imperialists. And if it were imperialists who were doing this on behalf of the citizens of this country, thank you to them. Thank you to them, because they played our duty. Our cardinal duty is that we are supposed to look out for when our resources being wasted. If you look at what the leader of opposition has been saying, the leader of opposition has said in 146 days, 2.7 billion was spent by Parliament. And by
That's the budget.
And by one
The trip.
yes, and by one office. This is what the leader of opposition has said. And you see, the leader of opposition is supposed to keep government in check. The Honorable Matia Kaseja, on more than 2 occasions, has stood before the president as the Minister of Finance and said, Mr. President, sometimes they ask me for a budget and we don't have any money to give. We're out of money. We are asking ourselves, where do we get the money from? And he says, the problem we have in Uganda is corruption. And he said that, look, the people who we give the money, instead of it doing what it is supposed to do, it does what it is not supposed to do. He directly addressed the president. And he said, Mr. President, I want to apologize. Sometimes I get angry and I go off. But it's because where I'm seated, I have nothing. And yet every time I'm expected to release a budget. Now, so you notice that there is a frustration even from government officials. We saw the head of public service have a take on corruption. She jumped out of her skin and said, no, enough. People stealing and taking funds that are supposed to do public duty. Now, the way Uganda is being run, if the president continues to cover up corrupt tendencies, it is a sad story for the country. Why? It continues to show the wide governance problem that we have as a country. The president needs to think and reflect a bit deeper. Why are citizens calling out on the question of corruption? We've said these things, Sarah. It's not the first time. They have been said over and over, and people are tired, okay? And I like the one that you also told us sometime recently that, look, in Karamoja, people were dying of hunger. But life went on as usual for everybody else. And it was like, who cares? Let them die. There's some little flies that exist somewhere, let them die. I like the way you put it. And I am saying, you have said it, he has said it, I have said it, Joseph has said it. I think Pollar also doesn't condone corruption, despite the fact that he has to support a certain position. I don't think he condones corruption. So we have spoken to these things over and over, and it looks like it is a tired song. But I think we should not tire. And this is the reason why we should not tire. We're in the Holy Week, and I want to reflect a bit on the Bible. The Bible says there is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end leads to destruction. This way seems very right to us as a nation. Very right. But people, at the end of it all, you see the problem, Joseph, we are all in the same boat.
Yeah, fine. Okay, get context.
If you go to the Bireete junction right now, as you join Wandegea, that place is full of a ditch of a pothole that not even these huge tires can go through that ditch.
It's a symbol that it's going to the north.
My God.
Museveni's other.
We have sung about roads, infrastructure in the city center to deliver. Okay, Sarah, this is what I wanted to paint. If we wanted to pick 2.6 billion and put it in coffee, what would we achieve for Uganda as a whole? If we picked just that 2.6, the other day, the hospital, the mental hospital, Butabika, put out a call to Ugandans that, look, you've been going for MRI, you pay 5 million to do an MRI in different hospitals. Now we have a bit of a lower cost. However, still you'll have to pay 315 and you have to pay 760 to run an MRI on you. And this is the cheapest you can find in Uganda. 760, think of an ordinary Ugandan who wants an MRI done on them, and they can only find it in Butabika Mental Hospital at 765,000. And for them, that is an average cost.
They will just die.
It is an average cost.
But
think of the people in Karamoja, think of the people in Soroti, think of the people, Auntie now, Soroti has a hospital, yeah? Bukede. Bukede is in the neighborhood of Soroti. So,
they said it's free.
And so the president tried to say this is a good investment because it's going to benefit the community. But how many other communities do not have this hospital facility? How many of us should become the speaker to invest the same way? For the president to give us land, because he said, I gave you land and you are able to build a school, a comprehensive school, where people are now training, and then now you have even a hospital. I would be happy, Mr. President, if you gave me land. You'll be shocked what I'll do with the land and the Ugandans. So we are happy now that he should distribute land to all of us. All intellectuals are willing to utilize this land to help our fellow Ugandans. We might not even have access to a budget like the speaker has, but let him give us land and let us see if we will not transform our own people. Because now he's praising somebody whom he says, I have given land, they have been able to build a school, the school is benefiting everybody, and there is a hospital benefiting everybody, and so the traitors are causing us this problem.
I'll build a university and head it.
You see?
Good man.
You see? So there is something that can happen to us. We should not run Uganda like it has no laws, like it has no systems, like it has no institutions, like it has no points for accountability. We have the IGG's office, which the leader of opposition has tasked to go into parliament and investigate the corruption claims that are there. And the IGG herself has been telling us that she wanted the fight going to the citizens. It has arrived. The citizens have taken the mantle. They did not sleep. They have accepted to do it. But I want to challenge the citizens that, okay, this is what the president has said, and it has really hurt us because we thought maybe he has a different approach. Maybe the start point is for him to praise and do his own investigation and then come back to act. Maybe he has his own approach, which we will find out later as time goes by.
If I may ask you on that.
Yes.
Don't you think the president cannot create momentum to give victory to social media activists? Because who knows what next? What if next they exhibit State House? Then what will he do if he acts on exhibition to fight Parliament? What if they exhibit State House?
State House
Should
has
he
jumped.
resign?
State House has jumped the gun, Sarah. By the way, if you read Chirunda's article today, the spokesperson, the person who normally writes for him, he has written and said, State House has a budget and we run it in a frugal manner. The president is very kind to Ugandans. He has a very little salary. And he travels across the country for wealth creation campaigns. He hardly stays for a night. He doesn't ask for per diem for a night. The money that he uses is largely for security and management. So State House has jumped the gun. So they are saying, if you want to audit us for accountability purposes and you're calling us to account as citizens, you call us to account, but at least the president has not been extravagant. He has jumped the gun already. So I think that in terms of the exhibition, even if it jumped onto State House, he's already beginning to tackle the issue. And that should not be the end of the story.
To tackle, to manage the issue, but there you go.
Yeah, it's the same thing. But ideally for us as citizens, what we expect the commander-in-chief to do is to remember he has the laws, he has institutions, and these institutions must be respected. We have the Auditor General's office. It has a comprehensive report. It has raised on these issues over and over, and we just need to continue putting out what the Auditor General has said, what the IGG has been telling us over a period of time, and now we need the DPP to also have substantive reports that are documented to do with corruption, what has been resolved, what is still outstanding, because that is what will help us move forward as a country.
Thank you, Dr. Ojambo. What's your take on Bukedde's speech, and do you think the citizens deserve the leaders they have?
You know, in my village, we used to have a drunkard. And this drunkard would go home every 3 p.m. He has gone to drink the whole day, so every 3 p.m. he would be going back to his home. From the drinking. And he would pass our home shouting and abusing people. And it became a daily thing. May his soul rest in peace, now he died. And later people got used to his noise every 3 p.m. That's how we have gotten used to Yoweri Museveni and his project. You need to find out where Anita Among came from. The current speaker was a member of FDC. She even stood as an FDC member, then later independent, and she landed into NRM. Now, why did Anita Among go to NRM? She was running a project. Anita is Museveni's project, but is a sub-project into the Museveni big project. And her role was to demobilize the opposition party. And I heard her speak that she managed to get Joyce Sebugwao from FDC. She also claims Taebwa from FDC, and very many other members of FDC and other parties. I think now she has started on NUP. She's getting members of NUP into the NRM. We just need to wait for next year when they announce. And I've been watching Yoweri Museveni for a very long time and studying him very carefully. He does not antagonize with the people who are working for him. You remember when there was a Temangalo saga, because we may start talking about corruption as if it has started today. When there was Temangalo saga, the one involved was Amama Mbabazi. And President Museveni shut up people when people are raising, especially for us who serve with NSSF, we are raising a flag that cannot be allowed. He said, please don't attack Amama Mbabazi. Is our royal cadre, is for NRM. And Amama Mbabazi went away with it. There was a saga of Kutesa several times, not even once, several times. But the most recent was when we were dealing with these oil things. And Kutesa was really in there as a person who had influenced a lot of things as a Minister of Internal Affairs, Foreign Affairs, and so many other things. He said, leave Kutesa alone. That is our, and many, I can give you a line of people. Now, Anita Among, under normal economics, if we were to study economics that we studied at HSC and at the university, should be struggling to build a house for herself. in Uganda's economy and what she has been earning. Remember, she was an MP, before she became an MP, I don't know what she was doing, but I started seeing her when she was an MP, a simple lady. In fact, she used to carry messages, a bag. She was like a personal assistant to Dr. Kiza Besigye. Then the next term, she did not go through. She sat out for some time, then came as independent. You really see a person struggling. Now, I needed to start building hospital a few years ago, then a hospital, then a teaching college, which government of Uganda cannot do in many of its districts. If you look at many of the universities which are doing well, or hospitals that are doing well, are colonial or Dr. Bote hospitals. But this wonderful woman has just come, and she is like the miracle in the Bible of the food that was given to Israelites. Let there be, and there is. The manna which people were eating in the Bible. And I heard Museveni sarcastically ask her, you know, Museveni he would do very well in theater. He sarcastically asked her that, where did you get this money? And the other one also sarcastically answered that, President, you forget that you gave me money to build a school. The money, I used it very well. I have built a school, and you know in schools, children pay fees. So the money that I have collected for fees is what I have used to build this hospital. And I saw the president nodding. I went very quick and checked that the president did economics at the University of Dar es Salaam.
Allegedly, yeah.
I did. I have read most of his papers.
Yes.
I've read one of his very good paper that he wrote when he was there. So I really want to accept that the president. And my professor was a classmate of Yoweri Museveni, because he was telling me, I used to think he was deceiving him. At one time when I was in Dar es Salaam, Yoweri Museveni came to launch an alumni thing. And I saw him walk to that man. He called him by name, and they really exchanged the pleasantries. So with the economics that he studied, it does not add up that you build a school today and it starts making profits, that you can now build a hospital.
To build a hospital.
There is that graph of break-even point. I don't think Yoweri Museveni has forgotten that graph of costs and the other one, and the two meeting so that you start making profits. So me, what I want to argue is that other than Awich, Yoweri Museveni fights corruption selectively. And my feeling has been that these organizations like IGG, the other ones there, they are there to look for people who are not looked at well as in Museveni's project. If you are outside Museveni's project, IGG will have you for supper. Like any MP who shows that is not now doing very well with, the IGG will be on him or her, and those other things. So, for those who are his friends, you remember he brought that theory of his, that IGG should be careful on people. The lifestyle audit. He warned her, and the woman became, the feet became cold, and she has since then, these days, she also has become a comedian. So this lifestyle thing, he said, and I quote him, leave people who are stealing money and investing in Uganda. When I fly around, I see so many new buildings. Sometimes I wonder whether I'm flying over Kampala. If we threaten these people, they are going to take the money out, and we shall lose this development. So Yoweri Museveni believes that corruption, and that is the neoliberal thinking of all things. Museveni converted into neoliberalism. And when people convert into a new religion, they are normally fanatics. they become fanatics. So he's a fanatic of neoliberalism.
Yeah.
So when I heard him say that, so I was not shocked, and I'm not shocked that he's not going to be bothered with Anita Among and other people who are stealing money until his, how do I call it? His mission is done. Once you become, your usefulness is finished, that's when they can now deal with you. For example, you should have seen Yoweri Museveni with the Kizza Besigye, the young man who was a political commissar. I thank really these people who came up with these videos that we can start extracting this. He saw this brilliant young man, a man who was talking very well, and whenever Yoweri Museveni went, he would first allow Kizza Besigye to be the precursor of the speech.
The ruler.
He would really, there was a time when he was hosting here leaders, the Nyereres and what have you, and Kizza Besigye is almost the one who gave the speech. At that time, he was very useful until he wrote his 19 points. So how many? I don't remember them. 19 points. Kizza Besigye became a very bad man, a person who is not patriotic, a devil who should be sentenced in court by Katusi.
Not clever, not clever anymore.
We are just lucky that Katusi was this profound judge, If it was these cadre judges that I see today who judge something even without hearing the other party, I don't know what would have happened. By now, the Kizza Besigye would have already been hanged. You know, Yoweri Museveni has not been hanging people. But I was really seeing that if this one had been sentenced, and you know what he had done, he would lead to death, my friend. He would be there. So me, I really, if you are looking for somebody to fight corruption and talk against corruption, go and look for somebody else, not Yoweri Museveni. He has no moral authority because in all intent and purpose, I'm glad the lawyers here, and I've always been saying that, you see, lawyers are complicated people, and for me, I'm a simple man. I don't want to go into complications. They are quoting the law. But in all intent and purpose, Yoweri Museveni, most of the things he does are fraudulent. And therefore, he cannot be that person to push. Just imagine, he had a right to go to court after 1980 election. And courts then, I don't think they were really ramshackled. He chose to go to the bush. You look at how most of these things have been changed. I've been telling you that I've been studying the processes of writing the Constitution. So I don't really expect my president to be that person who is going to be a vanguard against corruption, because corruption facilitates his project. His project only lives because there is corruption. If anybody made a miracle here and closed the corruption, the NRM would close its offices and go back to where it came from, because that's how it thrives. They keep on changing this, changing the other, and this short-circuiting of things is what builds the culture of corruption. Corruption cannot be fought by those bodies you are talking about. You need a system. You need a moral system. A moral system to deal with things. If you are just going to put their laws, the courts will still remain corrupt. And for example, you have seen most of these big scandals in this country where it involves billions of shillings. Who has been convicted other than Obe and his group with the local government thing? Tell me any success story. And Obe, I can tell you why. I can tell you from a historical perspective why they were convicted. If you look at the man who was involved, the permanent secretary, was a strong UPC man, a man who did not like NRM in any way. The Obes are dealers, and for me, I normally believe that these dealers sometimes know each other, and you know, this is a deal government. So the Obes were taken to jail because they had broken the rule of deals. You know, when you are dealing, you must follow certain things. They must have broken the rule, and that's why they were there. So, Sarah, About Bukede Yami, I was not shocked. I have heard that speech several times. For example, attacking people. He was lambasting, and I saw my senior there condoning that the people who are talking about this corruption and are talking about among are young. Is Spire young? Spire is not a young man. Spire, by constitution, is a man who is almost is almost threatening his retirement. He's not a young boy. I know him at least. He's a person in terms of age, in terms of study, in terms of profession,
accomplishments
experience.
generally, yes.
This man spent a lot of time in the seminary, and before he left the seminary, he has spent a lot of time outside this country. People may not know. He spent a lot of time in Tanzania. So he has a lot of experience. By the time he says something, he has a proper judgment and he has facts. Number two, why doesn't Museveni show that what these people are saying are lies, and
yes,
they attack the people?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Afanda, which I know you have a few issues to respond to, but what do you make of Honorable Mpuuga's response to the efforts by his party to recall him?
Okay. But I will first run over response to what has been raised here. Then I go to the Honorable Mpuuga. The congressman indeed makes a wrong assertion that the army raped. The army never.
They did.
The army never. And these are accusations that we throw out there in the public to the world with the current technology.
Manager, can I give you information, Major? You remember the story of Candida Lacoin, which almost led to the closure of the monitor. In fact, they closed it.
They closed it.
They closed
the
it.
woman they were
It was a
shaming
rape.
in public.
It was raped by UPDF.
But even this rape is not a rape of a soldier man raping a woman. He's talking of a soldier man raping a man.
No, soldier.
Not rape.
It was Comrade
Let's
Awich.
put this in context.
Okay.
So
We're
you are
talking about
against male
homosexuality.
rape?
You see, he said that
NRA,
NRM has no moral authority
They
to talk
don't.
about homosexuality because NRM
Men.
soldiers were raping men.
That's
That
correct.
is what he said.
That's correct, yes.
And which I totally say it is wrong.
It's a fact.
And I'm saying it is unfortunate because these assertions, we put it out there and it flows like a wildfire when they're devoid of any evidence of any sense. And you know, it is easy to accuse than to put it right. And repeated lies appear like the truth. Even you now, if you woke up today and you say you are a Salongo, that you have produced twins, and you repeat it 2024 for the remaining months, by 2025 they'll say you are a Salongo.
And I'm a grand Salongo, by the way.
These lies of men raping men is not correct.
And I like
at
the
one
argument.
time, colleagues will recall that the code of conduct was so high that even Western Europe started crying with us because doing a wrong, even stealing a chicken, would amount to death by firing squad. Is this the same army you're talking about?
Yes.
The political commissars of the army were so much imbued into criticizing the wrong to the extent that even if you met the political commissars of NRM meeting, you'd think you're meeting an anti-NRM. This is not the army that you say could rape men. That is wrong. The other thing that I want to talk about is the PS cutting budget. I am yet to know if it is true. But if it is true, that is good news for the whole week, as they said it. And of course, you know that a PS cannot take such a drastic measure without the knowledge of the president. Just like we had said that statecraft is such a big institution to manage, such that sometimes the president chooses to act in another way. You may say he's not acting directly because the parliament has done this, but it's trying to do it the other way around. So if it is true the PS has cut, that is good news, because there's no way you can cut a budget of an institution like parliament, a mere permanent secretary. I'm saying mere because compared to the action that is taking, is so huge without the president's notice. So how I wish it is true. The other thing is, what if State House is exposed? I think this would be good for Museveni because it doesn't condone it. If it is exposed, it would help him to show the wrong around him. So if Inspire is there, and Agatha is there, and they have their technology which can unearth the unseen. I once passed around on Mitiana Road around Bira, and there was a witch doctor with a very scaring name, which says in Luganda, translated in English, that the one who sees every hidden thing. I think it was like, let's check question, something like that. So if the spy can see the unhidden and they can expose, it would help the president because he may not be knowing the wrongs going around him. And trust me, he will take action. So don't be worried about exposing the State House because it will just give a platform for action. About keeping the stolen money in Uganda, I still think that it was a methodology approach that the president said, but it is misquoted. In other words, first of all, the president acknowledged that there's a mischief. People have stolen money, or people are stealing money. His worry at that moment is, how do you deal with it? As you ponder how to deal with it, you must first stop the hemorrhage. You must first stop it from going out. So it is not like it must be one thing and not two, that you cannot stop the hemorrhage and also stop the mischief or deal with it. So his idea that take the lifestyle audit carefully so that you don't let the thieves carry the loot out is being overemphasized to the effect that he condones it. He knows it is a mischief. He's actually thinking that while we think of dealing with this mischief, how do we ring fence outside so that the thieves don't carry the loot and we lose it out? So, but I think it is being misquoted. Now, back to Honorable Mpuuga's scenario. I looked at it and I thought first of all, I was wondering whether or not the party that nominates a person to this position has the power to recall. Well, laws are not interpreted outside court, but my interpretation of the law is that they cannot. And therefore, their mandate stops at recommending. Because he is not there by the party, he is there by Parliament. Parliament approved him. Meaning that even if the party recommended him and Parliament rejected him, he wouldn't be a commissioner. So he passed that test of the Parliament and therefore he went to the other level. Now, there's a lot going on in that party. For us as NRM, we wouldn't wish to poke our nose into it. It is their house. We wish them well. Because for us, we wish them well because a competent opposition helps us in change. In any case, we all know that an opposition is a government in waiting, which is healthy and good for the country. So we don't want to poke our nose so much into it. But I think his colleagues are overthinking and expecting that you can nominate somebody approved by Parliament, and you think you can bypass Parliament to recall him. Because now they think it is the power of the Speaker to reject or not. He was approved by Parliament. So about the authenticity, the lawfulness of the money, I also had doubts about it because this is why we have all this chaos in Parliament. How money is shared there, whether you create and interpret the law on your side and you decide to say we should do this. And I think that has crystallized to the PS reducing budget. You may say you are right, it was justified, the commissioner deserved this and all this, but eventually we can see how it is crystallizing to the effect that the budget will be reduced. So, it's rightly there in my opinion, it can't be recalled. And I'm sorry for the colleagues in the other party, though we don't want to poke our nose into it, but I can see that they are not happy. But we had warned our citizens that please don't go there, stay with us. And therefore, we are still calling them that house there may appear problematic. Please, NRM is still open to receive those who are sane-minded to come to the mighty party. This is a mass party. we wouldn't even victimize somebody that you were in the other part. After all, you can see even the speaker was the other side.
Is evidence.
So this is the true definition of a mass party.
Mass party with the
Inclusive.
M-A-R-S.
M-A-S-S.
Mars.
So it is M-A-S-S. So it is all inclusive. So our colleagues who are still caught up there, the doors is still open. The bus is not full. They are welcome.
Ochieno, what's your take? Does the party have power to recall the commissioner?
I don't know. I'll let you, particularly two unbiased lawyers, to help me interpret, including yourself as an anchor. You've got the prerogative to do so. It's just extremely unfortunate, actually, that if we were a genuine functioning parliamentary democracy, that this would be the kind of things that we're discussing. I think this is a manifestation of the breakdown of institutions in our country. And perhaps some of these things go into the politics of personality and whether or not we have people in public spaces who are basically political leaders. And on this platform, I'm possibly, myself and Awich are possibly the nearer suspects in terms of politics and go into public spaces. And that when we go into these spaces, we should be respecting the institutions that we represent. I'm just quite concerned by the emergence of some of these issues in NUP, granted relatively young political organization, but in this day and age, the old Miltons managed to do it in the 50s, and the battles were slightly much more straightforward. With the experience of what happened before NRA came in and 38 years of NRA, and the fact that we're now in this season and period of technology, I think building structures and systems shouldn't be a problem. Now, for an organization like NUP, that came with a huge amount of goodwill. I would have hoped that systems and structures in the organization is not the problem. I think the problem is the caliber and the kind of leaders that we these days have men and women who are seeking jobs and opportunities, and so people who do not respect systems. Because if the systems quite clearly internally within NUP, and we've got leaders who are actually responsible, if there's a breach of process inside NUP, do I take responsibility as a member? Do I take responsibility as a leader? That before actually even necessarily going to the National Assembly. And in normal democracy, particularly democracy that UPC would build beyond NRA, you would come with leaders that are sufficiently responsible and conscious, meaning that people who would possibly be willing to step aside, even if they're not necessarily wrong, if it is to save face and to save the internal squabblings within a political organization. But in any case, in this case, we know that word has it that NRA already has a hand in there with the companies inside NUP. I think the issue is not possibly now a NUP alone issue. The issue is how this matter arose. It is the question of the rot that exists in the National Assembly. And as you know, bring a rotten egg around a big basket and you know what will happen. So unfortunately, I think NUP and possibly even poor Mpuuga may actually literally be victims of the malaise that we're discussing on our early side, that, well, it's a rostered system which people go in there basically to pick and put their hands in the till and pick as much as whatever they can. If you look at the original letter, Sarah, and I think we had this conversation about three weeks ago, yes, a series back. You look at the contents and the context within which the meeting that actually allocated this money, it was possibly be very tempting not to dismiss the fact that actually poor Mpuuga was encircled. And so therefore, in Trump to this thing, the man in Richard Botti used to say that Museveni would do the hook and then catch you. And basically, he's been caught up into that. But to use my remaining 1 minute, because I just need to think that I need to respond to Comrade Awich on the Acholi male rep. Because I'm the one who raised it, it's very important for this program, and it's got legal implications. I'll just ask that people look at the openlibrary.org, male survivors of wartime of sexual violence, semantic scholar, gender conflict and post-conflict reconstruction in northern Uganda, take Gungu, which my good brother here knows, Refugee Law Project, Google Julius Okwera rather, and say journals examining male wartime rape survivors and past victims of justice, the path to genocide in northern Uganda, that is just Amnesty International, refugee law project.
That's enough.
It's quite a huge amount. This thing is
No,
there.
I mean,
The
I'm
reason,
happy
the
to
reason
hear
why I was
that discourse.
the reason why I was continuing it is because we've already had this conversation, including with Comrade Awich. And in fact, I think the first time I raised, he did not raise much objection. So I don't want us to come in this program and then begin to have conversation, and then it becomes a competition around things which are very obvious. I'm very informed about it. That's why I actually raise it like that. But it's really for the context of the broader national conversation. So this is not about Comrade Awich. It's not about NRM. In many cases, I always say to my NRM friends, this is a factual experience of how does a nation state, how does this conversation help us to learn from history, to try and then build consensus on how much forward we're going to go beyond. I am a net contributor to helping to heal the processes in Acholi, Lango, and Teso, with the view to simply saying that we need a Uganda post-NRA, but one in which, including Luweero, put on the table, we have a conversation and make sure that some of these things are not repeated. The cheeky thing, though, is that Museveni is on the spot because he's the commander-in-chief. He was the commander-in-chief of that NRA. They did these things. And I'm trying to say that now, to blackmail Ugandans over homosexuals, he doesn't have a moral authority on it. And basically, that was my point.
Thank you so much. Charity, Mpuuga's response and the speaker's reaction. Did you see it coming?
So I didn't see Mpuuga sticking to his guns that I belong to NUP, I've not met my party president. All these things that I have read are just in the press, and he says them at burials. I have failed to access him. First, I did not believe the statement he has failed to access him, because before now, they have accessed each other very easily. And before now, we had also had Ssemujju Nganda going on radio and saying, I've spoken to Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu independently, but I've also spoken to the Honorable Mpuuga independently, and I've asked them, ceasefire, let's find ways of diffusing this tension. So at that point, I expected that maybe there were background meetings that were happening. So I didn't see and I didn't expect that the Honorable Mpuuga was going to come out and say, look here, I've never met him. I just see these things happening. And as the party president, he's lashing out at me at funerals. He's lashing out at me in public spaces, but he has not taken time to meet me. And if that is true, then that shows that administratively there is weakness within the National Unity Platform. I know they are going to abuse me because it's what they do when you tell them something. But yes, abuse you do, but it shows there is a weakness within the administrative management of the political party, which must be tied together to make it succinct. Questions of governance are difficult issues to deal with for a start. We all know that you cannot manage an issue through public fora. You cannot manage an issue through media. There are different levels in which to manage sensitive matters. So if you are faced with a governance problem, you must pick up on the various facets of managing the issue and manage it that way. So right now what is happening, and I think I saw, Sarah, I think it was you who tweeted somewhere that NUP should stop playing to the gallery. And I think they should hear that. Like, not just hear, but think about it. Don't just play to the gallery. Because right now as it is, everybody wants the party split. Okay, the ones who are in the bus. They want that party completely away. Why? If you see what the bus proponents have said, and you've just heard Pollar, which saying the bus still has a lot of room.
The bus is getting empty.
Come and enter the bus.
The bus stopped moving.
The new minister for culture, as soon as he was sworn in, he said, my first agenda is I'm going to make sure the political prisoners for NUP are out. That was his first promise. Before he does anything in office, before he does
Minister for
youth and culture.
Let's just simplify Minister for Children.
Youth, culture, children. Balam. He said, I am going to make sure all NUP political prisoners are released. Guess what? Today, the president has said, I am going to release the NUP.
Yeah.
100%. The president has confirmed, I'm going to release. So the youth minister is already biting. Things are happening. He has promised, I am going, and the bus is empty. The bus is going to fill. So no, it's a clarion call. You can abuse me if you want, yes, fine. But you better put that political party in order if it is a vehicle you want to use in 2026. But if it is a vehicle you want to ditch and create a new vehicle, and here's what I want to draw the parallels for you. That FDC, these people like Tom and Jerry. I think the bus people watch a lot of Tom and Jerry. You know, Jerry sets traps for Tom. And then he sits 20 miles away and watches Tom fall into the trap and he starts laughing. He's giggling so much until Jerry realizes, Tom realizes that Jerry is the one who set the trap and runs after him. This is what NRM did to FDC. And they have successfully dismantled that political party called FDC. That even when the political party went to Dokolo for a by-election, they could not pull their outfit together. The clout with which FDC used to espouse on the ground, it was not there. And so whenever political parties are weak, I said political vehicles help us with electoral processes because the citizens must ally themselves behind ideas. And ideas are generated through political parties. But I was impressed to listen to Joseph when he was talking about building structures, that UPC managed to build structures with almost no money. And we know that ANT has been building structures since 2006 to when the Honorable Shamuntu left and joined ANT. He said, for me, I'm going to build structures. But we have not seen a sufficient structure that has come out of the ANT, which is the Alliance for National Transport. Actually, when they announced the CDF, they told him, stop being too quiet. Say something. The social media called him out. The young people said, no, stop keeping quiet. Come out, say something. And he continued being quiet. So,
and yet, if you don't mind, he had actually raised a reasonable amount of expectations.
When he first came out of FDC.
Because he has regard. He had built a personality, and so that institutionally that he has this minus. But there you go.
But I still think he has the personality.
No, of course, yes.
Be careful with Ochieno is luring him back to UPC.
To UPC.
I've been seeing their negotiations.
So Sarah, I didn't expect Mpuuga to make the political statement that he said, but it is also a loaded statement. It is a political statement. In a sense, he's saying, I am not leaving NUP. I was part of the people who built NUP from scratch. But what NUP should be reflecting about is why should he not leave NUP right now? And yet we have seen his tendencies in Parliament, because this service grant, for me, it was my biggest disappointment with him. It was the maximum disappointment with him when they said it is person to holder. As much as we want to think about the hook that he didn't see was going to get him, there was a bait. He was in the water and he didn't see the bait. He just fell for it. And by the time he ate it, the hook was inside his mouth. He should have reflected as a lawyer on the question of person to holder. Because you just don't sit in a meeting and we agree we are cutting this cake, but this particular one, we are going to write it in such a fashion that it is person to holder. Even if you say it is a parliament document, it will never come out. It's the same thing that I asked Joel Senyonyi to do when he said, I asked for 1 day, but parliament gave me 5 days, and the letter comes out signed by himself, showing he asked for 5 days. Yes. So, I mean, at that point, it became a political story.
Indeed.
And when I said it,
And fairly legitimate.
those young boys, as they do always online, started to say she has been compromised. I haven't been compromised. When it comes to a political story, you must pull the politics out of reality. If we want to call for accountability, we better be clean ourselves, and we better have systems that we grow to push for that accountability. So the National Unity Platform needs to build a system of accountability.
But you seem to be criticizing both Noop and Mpuuga.
Yes.
What do you think should have been done?
Yes, I'm criticizing Noop and Mpuuga for the following things. Okay, Noop, I'm criticizing them for the way they have managed the Mpuuga crisis.
And for Mpuuga?
For Mpuuga, I'm criticizing him for having accepted the person to hold
for
service
acting naive.
grant.
Okay. Doctor, what's your take and what should have been done?
Sarah, this Mpuuga thing has really wasted our time. And sometimes when we are discussing it here, we are just falling into the trap of NRM. You know, NRM is a siasa party. And you know how siasa works is by confusing people every time. In Uganda, there is no story that runs and people follow it to fruition, to get a solution. This one comes, then you hear there is a Chankwanzi, as somebody slaps somebody, is Chankwanzi, there is a cabinet reshuffle, and so on. So Mpuuga and Noop have really fallen into this. Noop, and I said it here, we are doing a very good thing. At the end of last year, towards the beginning of this year, they were pursuing a national cause, pursuing a cause of people who had been maimed, people who had been killed, people who were in incommunicado places, and so on. And all of us we are saying this is what a political party of this era should be doing, to fight for the common helpless person. And Mpuuga was the one holding this flag. And everybody thought that Mpuuga was a very serious person.
Seasoned politician.
Just imagine how after a few months, a bogus story emerges. And this bogus story has now wasted a lot of our time, that Mpuuga was given a service grant, something which has never existed. It is not in any law, and Mpuuga knows very well as a lawyer and as a teacher, he knows that certain things really cannot happen. It's like if today somebody told me that I am a princess of Buganda. I would say, are you mad? Princess of Buganda from where? You know, Jambo to become a princess of Buganda? Not even a Muganda. Not even a Muganda.
I mean, she's saying not even a male one, but a female one.
Yeah, that is
For you, you are saying,
For him, he's saying it's that outrageous.
It's outrageous. Yeah, I was starting from the impossible.
The extreme, yes.
A princess. Of course, he's pulling it to a prince. But I'm not even a Muganda. Let me cut your imaginations. So Mpuuga should have known. Then the party, my friend. The thing is behaving like... I think the party has forgotten that they long left Firebase crew. They left Firebase crew and became a political party in Uganda. And a political party has certain structures, certain systems, certain procedures. For example, don't they have advisors? And you are lawyers. Why don't you call them? Don't they follow law of precedence? You remember what happened to 3 MPs of Kadaga, the 3 MP, the rebel MPs. Parliament, in connivance with the court, put in place something which was beyond reason. Because for me, I'm a student of political parties. If you stand on the ticket of a political party to go to Parliament, you are a member of Parliament, but who has come on a certain ticket. And that's why you become a Noop MP. In that case, it was NRM MP. But of course, court ruled, and I don't want to argue with land people, court ruled, and then Kadaga also, because Kadaga even created a very big problem. The parliament, for us who start the parliamentary system, which is the British, you have the left and the right. Full stop. There is no middle. And that's why we have been arguing against this UPDF being in parliament. Because UPDF in parliament, is it on the left? Is it on the right?
And
but
yet
you
it's
see,
supposed to
the
be.
legalities, people confuse you with the laws. Those ones who take the dead, they take. So, Nope should have known. Nope should have known that Mpuuga is a very good friend of Anita. And Anita is not stupid. She just opened and said that a speaker has ever judged on a legal matter. Kadaga did adjourn and said, these people, they cannot leave the house. I am going to create for them another position near my seat. And it became the third part of, in fact, the fourth, because in parliament now we have opposition, we have independence, then now that was the third. That was now the third group, the fourth group. Now, with the Mpuuga and the writing of the letter, and I think Rubongoya is a lawyer.
He is.
Senyonyi is a lawyer. You can forgive Bobby Wine, the poor.
Senyonyi is a journalist.
The poor. He's a lawyer.
He studied. Oh,
Yes,
I have
he's
not.
a lawyer. I don't know whether he's an advocate, but he's a lawyer.
No, he's not an advocate.
He's a lawyer. So you can forgive. You
I
can
didn't
forgive
know.
the Chiwani boy. That one you can forgive him. Maybe it is part of the Chiwani. They should have known that there is no way Anita was going to chase Mpuuga out of parliament, because they should have just read from the previous story of Zake,
But how about the law
where they
itself?
sent Zake, and the speaker rejected him. Said this one cannot, they chased him
Cannot be
away
a commissioner.
from the commission, and they said this one cannot be our commissioner. And I think that matter is still before
Court.
Let's leave it at that. So you're asking about
I'm
the law.
asking the law under Section 5 of the Administration of Parliament Act stipulates procedures through which a commissioner of parliament can be removed.
Yeah, that is for you lawyers. But for us who sit outside here and read these things as we take mineral water, we look at analysis. Do you expect Anita? Or you are just wasting our time? It's a waste
So
of
what
time.
should they have done?
They should have just kept quiet and push Mpuuga through political means. Because right now, they are wasting a lot of their fuel, going nowhere. They will never reach anywhere, I can tell you. Then Mpuuga's statement. Mpuuga's statement was also ridiculous. Because Mpuuga is neither here nor there.
He became a politician.
He's just confusing people. And for me, I thought a progressive young man, I'm calling him a young man because of the structure of politics in Uganda, who really everybody was looking at, and people are saying, I have had a friend who is in Cavalry University, now we don't talk because of defending because you see, I was saying that in a country like Uganda, we need forces like
I both academicians.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
I
Institutions.
already
Yes.
told you.
Forces.
Even those young
I was telling him that he was saying nope. In fact, he calls it nappy. He says this nappy is a useless thing. And I was telling him, no, let's support these organizations so
Yes,
that
which
there are
are
many,
starting, yes.
so that they can galvanize a force to
Yes.
cause change in our country.
Yes.
We don't want a country of dictators where people speak and it's as if it is the alpha and omega of everything. And he was telling me this thing is going to collapse. And his first reference always used to be these Mpuuga boys. And now I am guilty somehow. I am guilty somehow.
But you were right anyway.
I am guilty somehow. I really think, and all the other group, Subi group,
Yes.
is with Mpuuga.
And Koma and
Is with
Kobazambo.
is with Mpuuga, and for me, I think
So you thought Mpuuga was the problem?
no, I really feel that there is Mpuuga.
He was being dismissive about the margins of-
Mpuuga and Senyonyi in NUP are just being used by NUP as pawns. There is a conflict in NUP. a big conflict in Nope. Mpuuga and Senyonyi are just pawns. There must be a queen and a king somewhere for those who understand chess, who are using this thing. And at the end of the day, we are condemning the pawns, because I don't see really how 500 million shillings in parliament would have caused the uproar, because Nope has a huge job to do, a very huge job to do. They have to consolidate their power, and also to fight the tyranny of NRM, because NRM had already assured them that come 2026, we are going to regain all our places and eat you like a sumbusa.
Yes.
So they should be careful. They should have been careful, say, okay, there is this money which has been stolen. Senyonyi would have done what he's now doing. Write to the right authorities, IGG, police, and others, to investigate so that these guys can be criminalized and people pay for it. And if, for example, police captured Mpuuga, they took him to court and they charged him, everybody would keep quiet, would say, this is really, Mpuuga, you were a disgrace. But the way it is, Mpuuga is running around that he's being followed by some people. And there's a group of people who have followed that narrative.
And
which
makes a lot of sense,
and it creates a lot of problems for us who want change in this country. It creates, so for me, I would advise them, let them go and play their comedy elsewhere. They leave the people of Uganda. People of Uganda, now where have they left the fighting for the people who were...
the ones who were imprisoned and they had disappeared.
No, they were not only, because now Balaam, my good minister for children,
to release the arbitrary
and forgive me because
ones.
there is no way I can explain this to my mother, this ministry that Balaam has. I cannot explain it to my mother and understands. So the best way to cut the long story, I just say minister of children. And they will understand. So this minister of children is telling us that now he's going to release the people who were arrested. What about those ones who died?
The missing ones.
What about those ones who died? What about the missing one? So the Mpuuga and the Senyonyi, and I'm saying this because Mpuuga looks to be out, Senyonyi is in. Mpuuga and Senyonyi, can you save us? And we go back to our thing. Number two, we were fighting for change. We are remaining with 1 year to go for election. People are now organizing themselves to get candidates, how to get funds, to mobilize people.
Yes.
For you are wasting time on ego-related things. You are behaving like drunkards who have finished alcohol in a bar and therefore moving to another bar and arguing that for you drank too. Now when we reach the new bar, you will have to leave me and I drink also too before you start. This is rubbish. So me, I want to tell you, Sarah, that this is just a story, and it plays to the trap of NRA. Because NRA, like he calls it, let me also call it today, NRA has now bought almost the media, and the media sets the agenda. And once they set the agenda, we all follow and start following until we reach a ditch and say,
what are we following?
Time here. Then by the time you go back, you have lost time. I would like, because I started, Sarah, what you have not seen in this Mpuuga Noop thing is now bringing a quarrel in the mainstream opposition. You have seen the quarrel between Abed Bwanika and Kizza Besigye. You have...
He has also written a letter,
Semuju,
to Noop, saying, give us your political stand on homosexuality. It has been delivered this afternoon.
You can imagine.
And now a new angle of fighting.
You can imagine.
And Doctor, I can also tell you information for free that the leader of opposition went to see the head of the Kabaka's kingdom, Katikiro. And Katikiro had some instrumental guidance he gave. Remember, he's a friend
of reconciliation.
Of Mpuuga.
He's a friend to Mpuuga, personal friend to Mpuuga. So I think you can conclude.
Yeah, so for me, I really feel that Sarah, this thing is really taking a lot of our energy. And the best thing is just to tell them to shut up. If they have nothing to do, let them close the party. We shall see them next year.
Thank you very much, and we shall take a
No.
He said he was in no.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the short break, and in the last segment, we are going to tackle the issue of Senegal. Senegal has been having peaceful elections since independence from France. And just this week, they have voted their new president after slight delay and protests. But what lessons do we learn from Senegal as Uganda? Afanda Wichi, what lessons do we learn from Senegal?
Well, I once again apologize. I'm not into the specifics of Senegal, but what I want to say is that the world over, there has been a gradual move for democratic approaches. You know that even in Africa alone, there was an era of military coups. And military coups happened nearly to every country, except for a few, Tanzania, Zambia, and few others. And that era went. Now the era of democracy came. And the era of democracy came amidst the World Bank, IMF conditionalities. It was actually the economic drive that carried on its back the democratic drive. Because he was saying that if you want to get money, to do these structural reforms, you must be democratic. And it seemed to have worked. To the extent that if you were here in BBC, nearly any other day, there was election in this country, election in the other country, election in this, and it went on. So now, I'm sorry to say that we are coming almost to a close of democracy if we don't work well.
So the era of democracy has ended.
Yes, it is ending.
And we are going into what
I
era?
have personally advocated.
Autocracy.
I have advocated in the party that why don't we try a non-democratic means to pick a flag bearer? Okay? Because in NRM, the picking of a flag bearer is nearly like a final campaign. And are you sure you get the best person? There's buying of votes, there's buying of warrants, and all this, and you get somebody. And yet, Sarah, if Harvard University meant to pick among us, one of us for a scholarship, they will pick, even if you appeal, they'll tell you why. They have picked him and not us. Why? The form will simply tell you the age, put your age. You don't know whether this scholarship is for the young or for the old. They will ask you marital status. You don't know whether this scholarship is for the married or not. The class of your bachelor's degree. You don't know whether they want a very first class or they think they want to develop manpower by middle grade. So you will fill it innocently. And each of them score marks. And they'll say, hey, you are the one who is picked. Singapore did it recently. Singapore picked a leader using that approach. There were even other criteria where the one who was picked scored 0. For example, does he have a traffic offense against him? 0. Does he have court cases? 0. Does he have corruption claims against him? 0. You can get one and it reduces your marks. Or even the immorality, does he have a claim against somebody's wife? Zero. And the checklist is there. And Singapore picked a very competent leader, not this thing of voting. So democracy is at threat
But
globally.
Singapore does elections.
No, they have picked their leader now. Check and see. So now I am saying that democracy globally is getting scared, including in America, where some people seem to think Trump is crazy, but he wins this election. Some people seem, the Republicans seem, the Democrats seem to think this guy is mad, but he wins this election, and that is democracy. You saw during the George Bush, the other scandal of this other thing, which was tampered with. So, but at the moment, while I said that democracy is being threatened, let me mention again, in my part of the democracy in Uganda, in Lango, for example, do you call that democracy? Where a candidate addresses a rally. In the past, they would say, thank you for coming for this rally. For your transport or for water, please consult my campaign agent, Mr. Okello. He will give you water. Right now, you campaign and people line up and you give cash. Yet the law says don't give money. So it is now depending on your ability to line up people, and in broad daylight, you can even come with your video recording if you want. Who cares? And that is democracy. And it is being challenged globally. So for now, for our brothers in Senegal, as we wait for the challenge, I say thank you to them. As we go, if we try to remedy democracy and customize it and make it have a human face, we need to see that the laws work. We need to see that the ground that is level, and we do it. Otherwise, democracy is at threat. We may have to resolve other methods, the Singapore or the Harvard University selection. And this does not exclude even America. Therefore, for the Senegalese who have elected their leader, I thank them so much. While we try to remedy democracy, I think all of us should look upon Senegal and think it is a good move. We embrace it, and we try to tighten nuts that are still challenging our democratic processes, including at the national level. All of us want a free and fair election because a decision should be by the people to seek their governance. I thank the Senegalese.
Thank you, Awich. But before you go, I've just got statistics about Singapore. Singapore held the parliamentary elections in 2020, and they will hold other parliamentary elections in 2025. They run a parliamentary democracy with an executive prime minister, but elect a ceremonial president.
Yes.
That one, how did
They
take
elected
that one?
the current ceremonial president on 1st September last year. So maybe that's the selection in a
That is
party.
the selection.
Selection of a candidate
That
in a
is the
party,
selection
but
of the
not
party.
in the
So
election.
that is, and we're slowly moving to that because
In parties.
yes, all across, because everybody's, you see the democratic system that we have now, for fear of words, it is a decadent system developed by the Greeks, government of the people.
Isn't it because of bad prayers? Is the problem the system or the prayers? Let me go to Ochieno. Ochieno, we have this situation where democracy is declining globally. But we have had countries with stable, credible elections, stable transitions like Senegal. What lessons do we learn from them?
Indeed, and Senegal is one of them. And as you know, I have been at this game for quite some time. I remember in the 90s when we were busy begging Anglo-American friends of the NRA that we should open up spaces here. The common example I used to give, including my other columns, including the New African magazine, were examples of Senegal, amongst the few, Senegal and then Cote d'Ivoire before it went into a little bit of a mess, amongst then 4 to 6 African countries that were then democratic. So to our next comrade, which is right where we are at the moment. But we must remember that from then on, we moved on for this push for pluralist policy in the country, on the continent. That's how the likes of Zambia Tal moved on, and I remember meeting then Zambian President Kaunda after a BBC function in London in the 90s. It was actually a very extraordinary thing. This guy with humility acknowledging that, you know, guys, Zambian people pushed for these things, and then we felt we needed to let go and we left it and given them a chance. That's why when President Chiluba came in and detained Kenneth Kaunda, even people who then had seen Kaunda as a dictator for a long time felt very bitter, and it's not surprising that Kaunda ended up dying now as a respectable statesman. But what did Kaunda do? Kaunda recognized and acknowledged that the system that he pushed had not worked, meaning the ideological polity, as it were. But number two, the fact that he went into rule for such a long time. Fast forward from Senegal to here.
The case of Zambia is still there, because the current president also detained Lungu and his wife.
There you go. But whatever the case, these guys have gone through changes, and the leaders emerge, parties emerge, they win and then withdraw. The constant for us is Senegal is the fact that we now are a young leader. So meaning it's actually possible, the working of democracy, when you look at on Ugandan example. It's interesting for Comrade Awich, who was actually a senior member of the NRA Secretariat, a political organization that has had one constant as a leader for all this time. And that with the early conversation we were trying to talk about youth, where Mr. Museveni, as I said, patronizes young people that because they're youth, they're neither here nor there, they lack experience. One of the big things from Senegal is actually not about the change, but the fact that the lead is 44. And this thing's just thumped as a big thing because the guy is young, 44, and democratically elected. In Uganda, I'm proud to be the one representing a political party that delivered the youngest prime minister at the time at 37 at independence in 1962. So this youth thing, I hope, while the democracy is declining, maybe it might not be an opportunity for young people to say that's actually possible for them to go for it. The Senegalese leader was substantially unknown. He was not really one of these big players, came from nowhere, and by and large went ahead and surprised Senegal and indeed the world. And actually, looking across the world, there is massive excitement about his relative age in comparison to the late elected leaders for that, which may be right about the death of democracy on the continent. But number two, that is amongst the young ones. The other younger ones are guys who came in through the military. What I don't know for countries like Uganda and a few others who don't want this change, what is it that leaders so fervently fear that they cannot actually let go for a possibility for a new chance? Early part of the conversation, we're actually literally begging just for a transitional process that basically brings us together. Maybe even a government of national unity in which all political parties and organizations come together. Maybe we govern for 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 years, before we start on as one another. Maybe by then we shall rebuild our relationships and move forward. Democracy works, and democracy is good. To the extent, therefore, that it's normally good for the economy. Former South African President Thabo Mbeki, I was watching a clip of his the other day. That guy, man, there was a time I didn't like him that much, but I continue to like him a lot more now. He was making a presentation to an institute in South Africa in which he refers to the best times in South Africa post-apartheid, the 30 years of democracy in South Africa, as it says. He emphasized the fact that when they came in 1994, one of the things they did was to found, build, and strengthen institutions, including the democratic institutions. So basically, it was institution of polity, governance, and the judicial system. And the obvious trajectory is that South African economy did a sharp on the rise between 1994 and 2008. And from then on, the economy of South Africa has been on net decline. In part, he actually links it with the death of institutions, death of governance, and the questionable leadership, the questionable element of leadership. I don't want to go into too much detail of that. But what it means is that, well, the Senegals of this world will tend to work for the majority of the African citizens. And the more African countries learn this lesson, and the more people like us, like in Uganda, walk up to simply say that, well, we should give one family a chance to rest, an opportunity for ordinary Ugandan citizens, including maybe somebody from Kamboja, and if he or she has the competence to be able to persuade Ugandans, so therefore deliver, they should try. After all, in the free and fair processes, you see, Macky Sall was refusing to leave. It was refusing to leave. But people went to the streets and said no. What else am I saying, sir? I'm saying that the young Ugandans must learn to say that, look, we know that in 2021, we were beaten and many of our people were killed. But we're saying that no, we need to keep pushing this in some more, meaning that it is possible to demonstrate, it's possible to demand, it's possible to picket. tomorrow, I mean, this Friday morning, there was a demonstration in Nagongera. We're demanding for Nagongera Road tarmac, and we're saying that no tarmac, no vote for NRA. And we've extended it from a general thing, meaning it's from LC1, you know, to LC Museveni. Initially, people thought it was about Museveni, and so some of the local politicians were neither here not going for it. I understand, I've not confirmed that my good friend Jacob Oboth, both the beneficiary of the edit, you know, is going to attend. We will have attended the launch of the campaign for Nagongera Road. What am I saying? Power of the people. People power.
So to get a road in Nagongera, you have to campaign.
You must campaign and demonstrate, just like to get Lira Kamdin Road, people had to campaign and Museveni had to fly.
But on that power of the people, Joseph, if I may ask you, the current president-elect Faye was endorsed by more than 100 political parties coming together.
Yes.
And he ran a campaign for 9 days. But with the power of that coalition coming from protests, he was able to get overwhelming victory without even a rerun.
Yeah.
Can Ugandan political parties come together?
You know, that is my begging question that bothers me continuously. And Sarah, you and I have been on these kind of programs and have continuously begged around this. And the burden of responsibility on this platform lies with me because I am the one who is a leader of a political party. But I've committed myself continuously that in the event that I formally take my office, I'll engage constructively with all my other colleagues in other political parties. But part of my worry, including the early conversation, including the nuances around what's happening in NUP and others, is I'm not quite sure whether my leader colleagues are committed to the same thing or are we really on the same platform. My hope is that in the event that we got the spaces, there is sufficient push from most ordinary young Ugandans. And Sarah, that's important. You know, we've always discussed this thing, and Robert will maybe have something to say, that how much time do we need? Sarah's question is extremely important. Change can occur extremely fast and swiftly. Local elections, by-elections, and the processes all around, you could see a net determination that no NRA, and it's not even about no NRA FDC, there's a clear view that the direction was Uganda People's Congress. It happened very quickly, very swiftly. Granted, the ground was there. I am saying nationally, it is possible for this kind, and I think one of the reasons why Mr. Museveni plays this fear and scarecrow thing, people can decide within a week, bang, that no, enough is enough. Which direction? Challenge for us, sir, is that leadership needs to emerge from amongst ourselves in the democratic opposition. We need to be presenting ourselves as men and women of integrity, men and women of, because we've been with NRA for such a long time, and because opposition has been abused for such a long time. I'm blaming, but at the same time explaining it, that maybe citizens doubt us insufficiently to simply say that no, Sarah Bireete has said it, or she's hit the point. Yes, Ugandans, we're going to go for Sarah Bireete, and within a period of a week, there is a mass movement towards a Sarah Bireete, and we simply say, no, enough is enough. But to not do that, average Ugandans, including those who have not been actively involved and following us on this system, need to see that Bireete and say, she talks sense, I can trust her. Yes, I can trust her with my life. Yes, I can trust her with my hope, my future. So maybe challenging me is to challenge me, and so that I actually challenge ourselves in the democratic opposition. But I believe organizations, institutions, and systems, structures, amongst ourselves is a prerequisite so that whatever we sell is a package which is worthy being purchased by the citizen of this country. It is possible.
Charity, you are an expert on elections. The Republic of Senegal has no autonomous electoral commission like we do. Elections are conducted by the Ministry of Interior, and the National Elections Committee is just a department in the ministry.
Yeah.
They've had credible, free and fair elections over several leaders. And they also have term limits. What do we learn from Senegal?
So from Senegal, there are a number of lessons to learn. Very many. One of them is what you start with, that we hardly have an electoral commission in Uganda. What we have is a facade. It's a facade because of the way it is constructed and how it is appointed. And then how the people within that commission execute their duties. I think the last commission to be able to deliver an election which Ugandans felt they were committed to was the one of Akabwai. I saw the former chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Badru Chigundu, coming out and saying, no, we did not doctor any results for NRM. And that won him a headline across very many newspapers. Reason, actually, the Daily Monitor. And the reason is because he is trying to clarify a question that lies in the minds of very many Ugandans. Ugandans believe most of those results are doctored. But why should Ugandans believe the results are doctored? It's the question of tabulation of results. How are results received from the polling station? How are they tabulated? And how are they finally announced? Can everybody attest to the fact that those results are democratic in the way they are cast, in the way they are tabulated, and in the way they are finally announced? And that has been the one question that has eluded the Ugandan election.
But just on Chigundu, Engineer Chigundu, don't you think he's right? Does he ever see those results? Is he the one who doctors them?
You see, he superintends over the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission is mandated by the Constitution, which you know very well, to collect data from polling stations, amalgamate it together, and finally announce for us who the winner is. So the mandate is the mandate of Electoral Commission. In fact, to the extent, they do not allow citizens to carry out a PVT. Now, so when you say that does he see the results? And is it up to him to change those results? The people who tally those results for him, which is the ICT department, are directly under his call. So he will see the results as they come in.
Have you ever seen the tabulation as an observer?
Yes, the tabulation, I have seen it twice. At Nambole, I saw, and in Kyambogo, I saw. What happens is that the results come in amalgamated. Even at Ginger, in fact, the Ginger Tally Center was the worst in 2016. What would happen is, if a polling station came up with results which were like 723, and I saw it a lot for the MPs because I was given access for the MPs, the tally center official would enter a 1 ahead of the 7. So where the 1 came from, you would never know. The results kept changing, and yet what you had from the polling station...
It's not a tabulation, it's a forgery.
Yes, that happened at the Ginger Tally Center. To the extent I could tell the polling station and I could tell where the doctoring happened. And I raised the issues with the Electoral Commission in 2016 at Ginger Tally Center. I even wrote an article, which I was criticized for because at the time they said you had limited knowledge to do with elections. Why did you have to write such a critical article? But see, as the results are entered into the system, there are people there who doctor them for people. Now, for Senegal, the lesson we would pick from them, what is it that their interior ministry does in terms of tabulation, receiving results, and finally announcing them that they are representative of what the people are expecting? Remember, already the media had reported that Faye is winning, and it didn't change much. In Uganda, they can announce that so-and-so is in the lead, and next morning,
they will switch off
the one who was being won by 10,000 votes is suddenly announced the winner. And even you, the observer, is asking, how did it happen? What exactly happened? And I think the best example was that tension that existed with Kenya. Remember that at the time, the observers had done their PVT and had returned Ruto in that PVT. But
there was a difference of less than 1%.
The people who were managing the tally center for Raila were 100% convinced Raila had won. Now, there was massive tension between Ruto's camp and Raila's camp. And the NBC could not announce results just like that, because if they did, those results were not going to be trusted at that point. So they had to go through a verification, over verification. Each camp was given a chance to the results, to verify, and to look at the forms, and to receive them from the polling stations, and to retally for themselves. Sarah, that gives confidence. Why don't you give us Ugandans a chance to the results from the polling stations? We retally them for ourselves. We reanalyze them, and then decide that actually what the Electoral Commission is announcing is true. Because when you do that, you take away the doubts. You take away the question Engineer Badru Chigundu was grappling to answer. We did not doctor the results. So democracy works as long as the systems are in place. And now we have more technology that allows for a seamless flow of data and a seamless flow of analysis of data. You don't need one person to analyze data. Thousands of people can analyze data. As long as they access that data, let them run analytics on it. And from those analytics, are we arriving at the same result? Because I'll tell you that for the past 5 results, if you pick and start running analytics, you'll be surprised what the results are telling you at each point. Our friends in Gliss have done this. They've played with that data, and so anybody who wants can go into Gliss, pick electoral analysis for 2006, 2011, 2016, see what they were arriving at with that data. It tells you that there are gaps within the data which make it difficult for Ugandans to accept that actually the results that come out from polling stations are accurate results.
Doctor, you'll have the last word on the show. And I'm asking you the question of how the Senegalese have used their raw power to develop and reclaim their democracy. We saw the protests of the people against Macky Sall's attempts to lift term limits. We saw the protests when he postponed the elections indefinitely. We also saw the raw power of the people in terms of higher turnout, 71%, and the people taking charge of their democracy. What do we learn from that?
I think Senegal is reaping from 3 things. One is the geopolitical relationship between West African countries and France, which is now not good. Then we have the founding father role. If you look at Senegal, the founding father of Senegal was not just a leader. He is one leader that many students have studied in Africa, Leopold Sédar Senghor, an accomplished academician, and therefore came up with a very good, robust system. Yeah, and a poet of that case. He came up with a robust system. He was in power for 20 years, but in those 20 years, he really built a foundation for Senegal, not like these other leaders who have to leave and we have to keep running around. Then the third issue is the size of Senegal. Senegal is a small country with a small population, not so much affected by ethnic trouble. Religion plays a role, but not as ethnic as these East African or Central African countries. So basing on those 3, they are able to do their things quick. In Senegal, majority of the people are educated. Sometimes you may not know. Either educated through the Western system of education or those who have not gotten a chance are educated through Islam. Islam plays a very big role. Their madrasa is very strong. So their civic level is a little bit high. They are not like in East Africa, where people ask that they're organizing elections. What has happened to Museveni? They don't know. They think that Uganda is for Museveni. Majority of these people in the village, they ask you, but what is happening again with Museveni? Where is he going? So there is that civic level of understanding things. But look at...
Dr. 9.2 million of Ugandans cannot read and write.
Yeah, that's the problem we have. So when you look at those three factors, you see that then look at the leaders, how they have been coming. Remember, the tall man was called who? Abdullahi Wade. Tried to shortchange everything. And the people told him, please, you cannot do that. And Mark Sally should have learned from that. Of course, the other
Mark Sally led the
surprised me
protests
actually, yeah.
against
Wade.
the other one.
Only
So
for
should
him
have
to
learned.
come.
So what Mark Sally
That was
successfully
very
did,
disappointing actually.
what Mark Sally successfully did was to alienate Sonko. Now, little did he know that alienating Sonko, who was the leader of opposition then, by taking him to court and the court ruling that he's not fit to stand and all those things. So he thought that that would help him to either play around and bring his, stooge. Yeah, he wanted to bring a stooge. And that's why he was attempting to prolong the electoral process for 6 months, because he wanted to campaign for that man and set infrastructure and so on. So what that did was to galvanize the forces against him. And this Sonko man was a nice man. If in Uganda we just had people like that. He said, okay, if I cannot stand, then I will support anybody who has the power to remove this Sally. In Uganda, there is a very big problem. I've told you that normally these people are interest-based, they are deal men. They would have spoiled this deal. So Sonko started immediately to campaign. When the judgment, by the way, was done like just a week ago, before the election, 1 week, a judgment was done that Sonko cannot stand because of the court case that he had that was against him. And immediately he said, all my supporters, I give them to Faye. And the Faye, the good news is he was looked at as a young man, is a candidate, 44 age. He was campaigning in a hood, and therefore he attracted the people very fast onto his side. But the other thing is morality. Morality in Senegal is very, very high. You have just mentioned the idea that the election is organized by government agency,
Yes.
which the other man, Sally, could not shortchange, and that is an element of religion.
96%.
In Senegal, people are serious Muslims.
Yeah.
And follow
96%.
Islam to the letter. And why I like Islam sometimes, although I'm not a Muslim, Islam is you live your religion. You don't just practice like these other people. You live.
Well, you're supposed
So
to,
people are sort of...
It's a way of life.
Yeah, they are sort of moral. The systems follow almost the Islamic principles because they believe, Muslims believe that as you are doing things, Allah is seeing you and your place is being prepared either in Jannah or the other place. You know, here in Christianity, we are given a chance that you will repent. In Islam, there is no repentance. There is no repentance you are prepared for. And that has been, you know, our society has been so much corrupted by Christianity. Christianity with neoliberalism are twins. They are really twins, and those two don't have moral.
The doctor.
They don't have moral order. They just believe in, you see, I believe in Jesus. Jesus washed our sins. you see a man.
We are in the Holy Week.
Yes, a man who is the most courageous
Yes,
thief.
academicized it.
Thief
Going for
is
Holy-
the one
going for Holy Communion.
who goes for Holy Communion. And you see, but this one, but they will tell you that, you see, you don't have power to judge. You leave it to God. So Islam, and where in West Africa, where it is more serious, I'm not saying Muslims here are not good, but in West Africa, where Islam is more serious, that is the reason. I have been analyzing this for a long time. Finally, the hatred of people. These young people really managed to convince the masses that we want to kick France out of West Africa. This has started in Burkina Faso, in Ivory Coast, in many of these places. And you could have listened to this young man's speech. I'm calling him again young man. The speech was
the president.
it was France versus Africa. Throughout. And young people have really understood that this France has really connected tapes to Senegal, to these countries, through the leaders, Abdoulaye Wade and all these other leaders. And they were looking for a way of cutting this tape. And many Senegalese have suffered. If you go to France, you may think you are in Senegal. There are so many there, and they are seeing these things, how they are suffering. Senegal was taking minerals France was taking minerals from France openly. Now, that is for a community that is civically okay. In Uganda, even if you landed a plane of the British here, so long as they can eat, sleep, worship their religion, produce children, they don't care. You look at this born-again thing. It is a scandal in this country, a real scandal. You see a pastor confusing people, not even preaching religion at all. They are politicians at the pulpit and criticizing this one, and people clap. Educated people, some with the PhD. So for me, I think what we can learn from Senegal, number one, we need to put aside ethnicity. Ethnicity does not know potholes on the roads. They don't select that this pothole hit Munyankore and leave Acholi, or the vice versa. Pothole will affect all of us. Number two, we need to interest people, to interest themselves in politics. Sometimes I find people saying, for me, politics, I left it. You can never live as a political. It's not possible. And those who, in fact, those who do not vote are our greatest enemies, people who don't participate in election. Number four, we need to understand what we want, and we go for it without fear or favor. In Senegal, this man could have postponed elections and threatened them with guns. They poured on the roads.
And
soldiers
promised them their son.
Soldiers came, they said, you are going to kill all of us. In Uganda here, me are seeing LODU, not even a soldier, local defense unit. You see people running away. These LODUs are our brothers, they are our sisters. Why should they scare us? And finally, we need sane leaders in our country. People who can live. Because I know Sally had all the powers. Sally had all the powers to circumvent things. But he looked at the masses, he looked at the forces, and he said, I have been a president for 11 years. Let me go home. Here, the man will say, kill them when he's almost going to die of nature, but he wants young people to be killed so that he can remain. We need sane leaders who can understand and say, let me sacrifice for my country. Thank you.
30 seconds, I know you're concluding. Just for information, actually, that's a very important point. Apparently, Macky Sall was also rained on. There's information that a former president from Southern Africa went there to breathe some sense on him. We just hope.
But also the Constitutional Court.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And so we hope.
Maybe something I left out. Senegal is really a friendly country. For us who do academics, there are few countries in Africa where you can go and be and you think you are in Africa. For us, we go for fellowships there. Is really a friendly country, and people do not want Senegal to have problems. Some countries here, African leaders wish them off the map. The other day you were deceiving us about happy people. Now it has gone to Tanzania.
Just to say that, I know it took your time. That's very important that we hope former African leaders can go to every African country with problems, including Uganda. And I hope that Ugandan leaders also have the capacity to listen and respond consciously to those other leaders, but being mindful that actually the most important space is Uganda for Ugandans.
Oh, the trouble
Thank
with
you very
Uganda,
much.
people fear Uganda. They know it is a dictator. Outside there,
Thank
when you are
very
there, they
much,
ask you,
our
how is
dear
your dictator?
viewers. That's all from us at the Citizens Chat Show this Friday. And I want to take this opportunity to wish you a happy Good Friday, a happy Easter, and a happy Holy Week. See you next week.